All right. Okay. Hello, everyone. I don't know why this particular topic came to my mind, but I don't have a huge audience. All right, so it doesn't even matter. So whatever, because this is like a more personal type of thing. But I figured, on the off chance that someone else is dealing with this, maybe they'd relate. And if not, maybe you'll learn a thing or two. Let's just talk about the elephant in the room. Although it's not an elephant and most people don't know about it. So, I have emetophobia. What? Okay, first question that you may be thinking to yourself, if you don't know what this is already. What is emetophobia? And I know how I describe it, but you know what? Let me actually look up like what the internet says. I don't know if this is scientific. This says source Wikipedia, but everyone looks at Wikipedia, so it's like and I agree with this definition. So, emetophobia is a phobia that causes overwhelming, intense anxiety pertaining to vomit. This specific phobia can also include subcategories of what causes the anxiety, including a fear of vomiting, being vomited on, or seeing others vomit. I've had this thing for, I don't even know how long, like just as long as I started having memories, I don't know. Just basically as long as I can remember, okay? And I'm 20 now, so it's obviously odd to those who don't have it. Okay? That's how most phobias are. Obviously, it's hard to understand. But I've seen, and I think maybe this is what triggered me wanting to just talk about it, I guess, is that I've seen a rise in people on the internet, and this can be said for a lot of different mental health conditions or disorders or whatever. But I've seen a lot of people online in comments of videos or whatever talking about oh, my emetophobia or whatever. Listen, obviously some of these people do have it and, they're talking about it. That's great, whatever. But some people are talking about, some people are saying they have emetophobia in a way that it's just they just really don't like it. And, they're afraid of throwing up, yeah. But I think people saying they have a phobia of something is very different than saying, I am afraid of that. Alright? And I think that's something that gets lost. In the internet especially. People will be saying, I have a phobia of this or whatever. And it's just they have a fear of it. I'm looking at this now, too. Fear. So let's say the difference. I'm officially, this is the AI overview though, but this is said more eloquently than I can say it. Fear is a rational emotional reaction to a real danger, whereas a phobia is an intense, irrational anxiety disorder about a specific object or situation that is out of proportion to the actual threat. The key difference is that fear is a normal response, while a phobia is a mental health condition that can significantly interfere with daily life and lead to avoidance behaviors. I think that summed it up. But basically what I mean by that is obviously no one, for my example specifically, no one likes throwing up, okay? I mean, I don't know anyone that likes it. It's not a pleasant experience. And I think people get that confused with not liking it, really not liking it or whatever. Not seeing a video of it, getting grossed out with having emetophobia. And that's okay. It's just, I think it's important to denote the difference. I even remember on the off occasion that I would actually say that I dealt with this, people I knew in school or whatever being oh, I have that too. And when someone had first said that to me, I was oh, okay, so I'm not alone. But then I realized, no, there is a significant difference between the two of us. Because yes, people don't like throwing up. So yes, it's it makes you nervous or whatever. If you're feeling sick, I don't know how it feels to a rational thinking person. So I don't know, but what I assume to the rational person about throwing up is that, you know, they don't want to, obviously. Unless they know, like, oh, I just need to get this over with so I can feel better. And yeah, you're kind of like, oh, ooh, you know? Or it kind of surprises you if someone else does it, or it can gross you out. But I should clarify about my specific phobia, because this emetophobia, I'm sure, like, it shows up differently in different people. Some people aren't afraid of themselves getting sick, they're afraid of someone else getting sick. Or they don't care if someone else is sick, they only care if they're sick. Me, it's all of the above. So I would get freaked out, obviously, if someone else got sick, threw up. I didn't want anyone to get sick on me, especially, like, not around me. And then on top of that, like, if I felt sick at all, I don't even know which was worse. I mean, I know now that's probably, like, the worst feeling compared to other people getting sick. When you get anxious or nervous, and everyone reacts differently to that. But one of the common things people say is, like, you feel nauseous, or you feel a little bit sick, or lightheaded, or whatever, when you're anxious, like when you're super anxious and breathing hard and whatever. As someone who was getting anxious about someone else getting sick, or because I felt bad in the first place, like, if I was feeling sick and now I'm anxious about it, I could actually not be sick at all, but I would be convinced that I was, because I got anxious about it. So I started, like, creating symptoms. Not consciously, obviously, but I'm anxious, so therefore I start breathing heavily. Like, a lot of things that I would do would induce other symptoms. Self-fulfilling prophecy, you could say. I never got to the point where I got so anxious that I threw up because of anxiety. That never happened. It was either, like, if I was actually sick. But it's never been like I got sick from anxiety itself. But I was always convinced that I was sick. For me, specifically, and this is just me living through it, I'll give a little timeline. I've had phases. I think that's something too with phobias specifically. Like, there are definitely moments. Some people don't develop a phobia until later in their life because of a certain event. I don't know what specific event caused me to have this, but it happened when I was very young. My parents obviously took me to different child, like, counselors and, like, psychiatrists to see what was going on, and eventually someone did bring up the term emetophobia. We just knew, okay, so there is a specific thing, like, that other people have this. But in general, I was more just treated for anxiety in general, which I also, like, dealt with, but a lot of times it had to do with being sick. Throughout elementary school, and even before I even got into elementary school, okay, like preschool or whatever, I don't even know, I've been afraid of throwing up. It was not very specifically known at the time. Like, this is all a confusing time for me and my family, because it's not, like, I would be, like, hyperventilating and breathing really fast and pacing and whatever at, like, 5 years old about what I said, like, I don't feel good. So, but to me, it's like, I didn't feel good, but not just, like, maybe it started because I had a stomach ache or something. That's how I started feeling anxious about it, because I was worried it would lead to that. But I also, when I said I didn't feel good, like, I was talking about I felt anxious, okay? I felt scared. And I didn't really know the difference. I couldn't convey that exactly when I was super young. And here's where the difference comes in between, like, me and someone who's like, oh yeah, I don't like throwing up or whatever. Like the definition said, it affected my life. It still does. But for a while though, it was a significant affecting factor. In elementary school, you know how kids throw up in class? So I was in school and there were a few occasions, and I can remember each one specifically. I can remember who it was, I remember their name, I remember what grade it was, I remember what I did. Like, I remember everything, these specific moments, because each of them were like just so horrible. I would immediately somehow be the first one always to like realize that it was happening. Like, obviously everyone else noticed after just a second, but I knew like even kind of before it was happening, because I was very observant and always checking to see if the people around me, like if anyone was feeling off or acting different or acting like maybe they didn't feel good. I was always checking for that. I was already on top of like knowing if someone did end up throwing up, I probably already knew that something was off before they even did. So most of the time I'd be the first one to see it, or I'd even tell the teacher like before they even did throw up, like, I think they're not feeling good or something's wrong or whatever. Just to give one example, like someone threw up in class in elementary school, and I tell the teacher like, hey, so-and-so just threw up, if they weren't like looking or whatever, I don't know. And I tell them I need to leave. And most of the time, I had some teachers that were more understanding, and not even understanding in that, oh, she has emetophobia. Like, no, it wasn't that. It was like, they just knew I expressed that I needed to leave, and they were like, okay. You know, like, they don't really know what is going on with me, but they knew that I wanted to leave the room. And obviously someone's sick right now, so it's not like I'm their main concern, you know? So it's like, yeah, sure, leave, like, whatever, you know? So I would leave, and then I'd just go run off somewhere. I don't know, most of the time I just like hide away as far as possible as I could from whoever threw up and wherever it happened, because I also knew the exact places that it happened. And I'd remember those places and not specifically not step or be around those areas because they felt bad to me after that happened. So that's another difference. But so I would get, super freaked out. And like I said, some teachers understood, some of them did not. And they would, and I mean, I understand, like, I'm in elementary school. Most teachers don't expect, at least at that time, I maybe things have changed in the past like 10 years. But at the time, no one expected, especially like an elementary schooler, to have any sort of anxiety, honestly. Except for those who, like, they knew a specific thing about them, like if they had autism or something, then I feel like teachers were a little more receptive. Even then, to be honest, I feel like things still weren't dealt with in the way that was best, probably. But especially for me, who seemed fairly like a typical kid, it was like, what's wrong with her, So some of my teachers would be like, no, you can't leave. Or, especially if someone hadn't gotten sick yet, or if someone got sick earlier and that event is over, and I would still be freaked out. Because it wasn't just for the moment. It was the entire day. I was wired up. I was like, oh my gosh, like shaking, breathing hard. I could not deal with it. Even if it was like hours ago, could not deal with that. So they would be like, no, you need to stand here. One of my teachers specifically thought that I was like trying to get out of class or something, which, like, I was in 5th grade, and it was like, really? Like, what am I gonna do? Like, go hang out somewhere else in the school? Like, I can't go anywhere, obviously, I don't know. But I guess she was concerned that I wouldn't be there for whatever lessons or whatever, I don't know. And she would tell me like, oh, they're fine or whatever, and I'd be like, no. Like, I just did not believe it. And most of the time I was kind of right, but whenever I'd asked to leave, and I would say I'm not feeling good, and I would be breathing heavy and pacing around, like, I would hold my ears like this too, because I didn't want to hear anything. I mean, I've always had a thing about loud noises too, but especially when I'm anxious or whatever, I don't like to hear anything. And in that case, sometimes it would be because someone's actively getting sick and I don't want to hear it at all. So I'd like hum to myself, I'd hold my ears, but I'd go up to a teacher and be like, I need to leave, I'm not feeling good. At first they would send me to the nurse, which we quickly found out was not the right place for me to be. Because, you know, it's the nurse. Like, anyone who's there isn't feeling good for one reason or another. And some of those people, it's because they're sick or their stomach hurts or something having to do with the specific fear I had. So then I realized, like, you know, I don't want to go to the nurse. I don't want to go there. And I told her, no, I'm feeling nervous. Eventually I kind of got some of the terminology. I would go to the school counselor, and I don't think she really knew exactly how to deal with it. I mean, she knew how to talk to a kid who was obviously scared, but I don't think she knew exactly how to treat this specific thing I had, obviously. Like, she's just a school counselor in elementary school. Like, it's not like she's a, you know, but she would let me just sit in there and like read or talk to her about what happened. And that was honestly kind of enough. Like, that was pretty much the main thing I needed in the moment, because I just needed to be out of the room and just somewhere where no one else is around so I could like fully calm down. Because it was a big event every time someone got sick. So yeah, so that was elementary school. Here's the other thing. It wasn't just affecting my life like when kids actually got sick. Because yes, that happens, but it wasn't every day, obviously. Like, someone wasn't throwing up every day in front of me. Okay, that would be crazy. But it would affect me in many other ways, because I would convince myself that I was sick or whatever a lot. Like, a lot more than I ever actually was sick. I didn't really get sick very often as a kid, and that's pretty common from what I understand. That's pretty common for someone with emetophobia, because obviously if you get sick a lot, you're more used to it. You're more exposed to it. Typically, someone who throws up a lot or more often is not going to be as afraid of it. They've been through it a lot. They've experienced it, and they realize each time, okay, I'm okay. You know, I got through it. Whereas someone like me, I don't get sick very often. I don't experience it a lot, so it becomes way more amplified than what it actually is. So anyway, but I would think I was sick a lot. That would also cause me to not want to eat, because I was afraid it would make me sick. Like, if I ate something, that would make me sick. So that was bad, obviously. Yeah, I wouldn't want to go to school because I was nervous that I'd be sick, or someone else would be sick at school. Or if someone had been sick recently, that they would be there, because I would associate them with illness. I also did not go on field trips. All of elementary school, I just did not go on field trips because I didn't want to ride the bus. Because of one time was on a bus and this kid threw up on the bus. So I started to associate like buses with getting sick. I thought, like, if I get on this bus, you know, it'll make me sick, it'll make someone else sick, whatever it was. So I didn't go on field trips because I couldn't go on buses. It seemed like I felt like, no, I can't go on a bus. So I just didn't go on any field trips. So yeah, I missed out on some things. Most time I still had to go to school. Like, you know, obviously I couldn't stay home every time I felt nervous, because I was in some points in time like every day. So I just kind of had to deal with it. By the time I got to middle school, I was kind of chill. Like, I don't know, it just didn't come up as often. For one, because like kids weren't throwing up as much in class as they were in elementary school. Like, they started to be more like self-aware, I guess. Anytime I was sick, obviously that was a different story, or if someone else was sick, but that didn't happen very often in middle school. Then we get to high school, and for the most part it was okay. But sophomore year of high school though was different. And this was kind of induced by a medication I was taking for a different issue, and I told my psychiatrist who prescribed this medication to me, you know, I feel like it's working for this other thing, but I feel like I'm getting anxious again. Like, I feel like I'm more nervous more often. And he's like, oh, You just need to, we'll up the dose and it'll like level out. It'll start working for the anxiety too. So I trust him and I do that. And then it gets worse. I start being more anxious more often. All about illness most of the time, but sometimes it would just come on, like I'd just be feeling anxious already and I didn't even know why. But it would cause me to feel sick, so then I'd be anxious about that, so, you know. And I told him this and he's like, I think he upped it one more time, like he increased the dose one more time because he was like, no, I'm seriously, like, it'll work, we're just gonna up it. Like, a few days after he increased it again, I was like, I could not deal. Because at this point, it wasn't even about getting sick or whatever. I mean, yes, I was always anxious about getting sick, but I just had this feeling, like this buzzing feeling all the time. That's the only way I can describe it. It was like a constant buzzing in my body. Like, my body was active. I could feel everything going on. That's what I felt like inside my body. Anything I felt in my stomach freaked me out. I didn't like eating because I didn't like feeling the different things going on in my stomach, because I felt like, I don't even know if I could actually, if I was feeling anything real that was happening in my stomach, or if it was just like more in my head. I'm just kind of imagining that that's what was happening in my stomach and kind of creating that feeling. Either way though, to me it felt like, you know, I'm eating, obviously your stomach digests your food. I didn't like feeling any of the digestive processes happening in my stomach. I didn't like feeling any of that. I didn't like feeling the food be in my body. You know, I just could not calm down. I couldn't calm down. Normally with my anxiety, yes, sometimes it would take some time. If I got sick or someone else got sick, you know, it'd take a little bit for me to fully calm down, but not like this, because there was no end to this freaking out feeling. It was like I went to bed anxious. I fell asleep like most of the time by taking this other medication that my psychiatrist had prescribed me. I took this other medication that was kind of like last resort, like if I absolutely can't calm down, because it basically knocks you out, like you kind of just sleep not too long after taking it. But I got to the point that I was taking this last resort medication every single day, like sometimes in the middle of the day, so then I'd just be trying really hard to stay awake and do my work for school online, because COVID was still happening, I think. You could go to school again, like you could be in person, but I went online, not because of COVID, because of how anxious I was, because I couldn't go to school at this point. I could not deal. So then, you know, when I'm at home, I'd be like in the middle of having to do an assignment or whatever, and I couldn't calm down, I couldn't focus, so I'd be kind of forced to take this medication if I wanted to feel better. And even then, it wasn't really feel better, it was more just like I am so exhausted and tired from this that I can't, you know, I don't have much energy to be anxious, I just fall asleep. So I'd be like struggling to stay awake to finish these assignments because I took the medication. And so I had this, you know, my heart was going all the time. I went to sleep feeling anxious. I woke up anxious. Like there just really was no, I didn't feel calm. I felt like I wanted to go home, but I couldn't. Like normally being at home would give me a little bit more sense of security. My feelings of anxiety, if I'm not at home, I would be a little more anxious because I don't feel as safe. But I was at home during this whole time and it just didn't feel like it. Like it did not give me any ounce of security or better feeling. Like it didn't matter. It didn't matter where I was. I would try to go on walks with my mom to kind of get out excess energy and try to relax, but nothing worked. Eventually I went to the ER one night because I thought like, I just really couldn't calm down. It didn't even matter. Even after I took the medication that would kind of make me sleep, it just wasn't better. It just still wasn't better, and I could not, my heart was going so fast, it felt like. So I went to the ER with my mom, just because I didn't think I was like dying or anything, but, well actually, I don't even know what I was thinking, honestly. I kind of was just like, I need help, you know, from someone. So I went to the ER. It was more just like, I don't care, maybe they can give me something that will physically make my body calm down. Because like I said, a lot of times after I was taking this medication that was increased, I would feel anxious about being sick, but it was more just like a chemical, physical reaction in my body. I wouldn't even know what I'm anxious about. I just knew I was anxious. So I stopped taking the medication. And my mom was like, we're gonna stop seeing that psychiatrist. Best decision. Once I stopped taking that, things got better. I wasn't as anxious all the time, but there was still the underlying problem. Like, yes, medication can induce you to feel certain ways, but I already had a pre-existing issue with having like anxiety, like panic attacks and whatever about being sick. And that wasn't gonna just go away because I stopped taking this medication. It was already there. The medication just made it worse, but you know, my mom was like, I really want to figure this out, you know. I started seeing a person who specialized in emetophobia and OCD, and that helped. And I did exposure therapy, which was very difficult because it's exposing yourself to what you normally avoid. In my case, that's throwing up. So I would have to read stories. It's like different levels, reading stories about people throwing up, looking at pictures like of cartoons, like not actual real people, then looking at pictures of real people, listening to sounds of that, watching videos of it, making a mixture that looked like throw up, and watching someone pretend to throw up in front of me. So yeah, but even though that sounds horrible and crazy a little bit, it did work because I'm much better now than I was. Okay, so this is a different day now, and I was looking back at what I said and I kind of glazed over this aspect that this person I was seeing was a specialist in OCD as well. I wasn't gonna get into it. Originally I was like, no, I'm not gonna get into like the OCD factor or whatever. But then I realized that kind of goes along with it and has been a player in all of this. So things I've read about emetophobia and whatever, there are many times where emetophobia and OCD overlap. So I'm not doing the full service, you know, if I'm not bringing up this other thing that was definitely a large factor. So certain things that I did were in line with what someone with OCD does, and that's what this guy was saying. I thought it was like counting or touching things a certain amount of times. I knew that there were things with germs as well, but I always thought, oh, my problem isn't that. Like, I'm not dealing with OCD. Things that I didn't know were OCD. Even from when I was really young, if I got sick in certain clothes, for example, and it wasn't like it wasn't like I threw up on the clothes, okay? Like, they were still fine to wear. I could not wear them. Could not. Because to me, those clothes were now contaminated, I think is the best way to say it, with this bad event. Even if they were washed a billion times, I don't think I'd ever wear them. Like, I remember there were these certain pajamas. I really loved them. Like, they were some of my favorite pajamas when I was really young, like 5 or 6. And I got sick while I was wearing them. And even though they were cleaned and whatever, after the fact, they stayed in my drawer. I never put them on again because they were tainted now, you know? Which can also be a symptom of OCD, which I did not know. And then there are the more classic examples that I guess I just wasn't thinking about. There are things that have just been so integrated in my life, certain habits and behaviors, that I didn't even know that there was anything to them, if that makes sense. For example, food. Big thing. I was always a picky eater. When I was younger, it was just like I just didn't like a lot of things or whatever, but it quickly became a thing where it wasn't just picky just for the sake of it. It was picky as in I was afraid to eat new foods for a multitude of reasons. Number one, especially when I was younger, I was afraid that I would not like it so much, like it would gross me out so much that it'd make me gag and I'd throw up. Because it was something new, I hadn't had it before, and it's not safe to me. So I did not like trying new things. As I've gotten older, yeah, I'm very scared of getting food poisoning still. I can admit that. I mean, I'm not cured or anything, okay? I would say I'm a lot better. I don't know if it's something that will ever leave my head completely, you know? I don't know. But checking food all the time has been a part of my life for a really long time. When I was younger, it was just cause like I didn't even know why I was doing it. I would just really pick apart my food to see everything. And as I got older, you know, I was checking to see, is there anything wrong with this? Can this make me sick? It wasn't just about taste anymore. It was like, is there something wrong in this food? Is there something that looks off that shouldn't be there? I remember asking my family, whoever was around me when I was eating, like, what do you think about this? Is this bad? Like, does this look like something? And they'd be like, I'd eat it. It looks fine. Even if they saw what I was talking about, it looked normal to them. Like, it was just, you know, food is not always consistent in texture or look. So most people, that's just part of eating, whatever. But to me, it was always an abnormality is bad. And I would just not eat a lot of times if something looked off to me. Or even if I just felt like it was off. I don't even know. Sometimes there would be nothing physically I could see wrong with it. But it just, something in my head was telling me like, this is bad. You're gonna regret this if you eat this. And I also would check too about things being undercooked. Very, very scary for me, especially chicken, obviously. I feel like that's the main one that everyone knows about. If you eat undercooked chicken, you can get salmonella. In 7th grade, I found out about salmonella in my science class. Like, I found out specifically what it was and where it came from. As I had known sort of about it, but I didn't know the specifics. And of course, when my science teacher at the time was explaining what it did to you, I perked up. I was like, oh, I gotta hear about this. Like, and I did further research when I got home. She said it makes you throw up, makes you very sick. I was like, okay, so I need to stay on top of this, you know? I can't have this happen to me. So I need to figure out what I need to do to avoid that, and prevent it from happening. So I remember, you know, there was a thing about raw eggs. And as a kid, I always ate if there was a little bit of cookie dough or brownie batter or whatever, things that would have raw eggs in it, I would always eat a little bit of it. There was some left in the bowl, and it never occurred to me. And then I found out about this, and I stopped because I was like, oh my gosh, I've been tempting fate my whole life with this. I can't do that. It's my responsibility. So I need to avoid. I stopped eating those things, which my family thought was unusual because, you know, I was always a sweets lover, and when it came to eating the rest of the cookie dough or brownie batter or cake batter or whatever, I was always like, yeah, I want some. I can now say though, I do once again eat cookie dough and brownie batter. It's worth the small risk. It is not the same as eating raw chicken. It's just at the time when I first heard about it, I was at that point where there was not any level of risk that I would take at all. And this isn't even that much of a risk, but I do eat it now. It's also part of exposure, you know, it's just to consistently do things that you sort of want to avoid. So that way you get that experience and you realize you're okay with whatever happens with this. You don't have to consistently be worried about what's going to happen. And especially realize that the risk is very small for a lot of things. So yeah. Other things I did, and this was especially prevalent in middle school, I'd say, when I realized how germs and bacteria and everything stayed on surfaces and were on people and on computers, all that. When I realized that that's how you got sick, or you could contract illness that way, hand washing is a very big deal for me as well. Or like hand sanitizer, anything, just something to kill whatever was on my hands. So I would wash my hands a lot, to the point where my hands would actually bleed sometimes because they were just always super dry and like cracking, and my hands would like burn. Regardless of that too, it wasn't even just the hand washing. I knew in my head I had a record, and I still kind of do this unconsciously, like not even realizing what I'm doing. I got into the habit of having a record of what I had touched since the last time I had washed my hands or got my hands clean. I touched this computer, touched this desk, I touched my pencil, I touched a door handle, you know, I knew everything I had touched, and going in to touch things was also like remember that I did this so I don't ingest anything, like don't touch my mouth or my nose or whatever without washing my hands now because I touched this. If there was like a long day of me touching different things or whatever, without having the opportunity to clean my hands, I did feel really bad, like emotionally, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. It just, my hands felt like just completely dirty, you know? I just felt disgusting almost, even though they looked just like how they do right now. But it felt like I could feel everything on them. A lot of my symptoms of OCD that I didn't know about before until I was told they were about contamination. Also, responsibility was a big one, like personal responsibility. I didn't want to do anything that put me at risk, because then, you know, I didn't even know what I would do. I would be like, that's all my fault. You know, for things that most people would not blame themselves for, like not washing your hands before eating, after you were in public for a bit or whatever. If someone got sick days after that, they probably would not be like, oh, it was because I didn't wash my hands that time at the restaurant when we were in downtown. I know I would. And so that's why I always made sure to do it, because I didn't want to regret it and blame myself later. Also, obviously, association with things. Like I had said earlier, if I or anyone else threw up in a certain spot or place, whether it be at school or even at home, I would avoid those places. I did not like to stand or be near them or touch them because, again, they were now contaminated with that experience. So those are just a few things. I felt like I shouldn't just kind of throw that in there and like not expand on it in case, like I said, I don't expect a ton of people to watch this, but just in case someone is trying to just learn about this or relate or is just curious or whatever, I don't know, I'm trying to be comprehensive. So, and also add in the thank you message as well. That just like came to my mind while I was deciding to do this again, because I was thinking about how I started seeing this specialist, and started seeing him when I was like 15 or something, I think. Probably is what the difference was between, because I've seen therapists and psychiatrists and whatever most of my life, honestly, and I've had very helpful people, but this was the first time I saw someone who specifically specialized in OCD and emetophobia as well. And that's why it worked, I think. I mean, just because he was aware of that there's a different way to treat something like OCD or a phobia. One of the best ways that I was never really told about to help me was exposure therapy, and he brought that up to me. And without being sappy or whatever, I'm very grateful. My therapist at that time was saying to my mom that she thought there may be an OCD component to this. She didn't know if it was within her capabilities to treat this specific thing she thought I might be dealing with. So my mom was like researching around, and she found this guy who specializes in these things, and I had no part in that. I mean, obviously I wanted to get better. I mean, hello, but I didn't. My mom was the one that found him. I know I was talking to her earlier, and she was like, you know, I want to watch your videos, because I don't tell her specifically when I post. So she's watching this. Thank you. Because my life has been forever changed. As crazy as that sounds, I'm lucky to have someone, and multiple people, but like in this specific instance, I'm talking about my mom. I'm lucky to have someone who cares so much about me and my happiness and well-being, that she has taken me to all these different people when I couldn't, or like just didn't even know what to do. For one, like when I was just really young, and obviously I don't know how to make appointments or whatever when I'm that, I'm talking about elementary school. But even as I got older in high school, I wanted to get better, but also I didn't really know where to start. My mom was the one who put in the work to get me that help. And I'm so grateful for that and lucky, because there are a lot of people that deal with these problems, and especially like if you're a child, like, or a teenager or whatever, you're kind of in a different position than you are when you're an adult. When you're a kid, a lot of times, like, your parents are the ones making doctor's appointments and whatever for you. I don't want to imagine what my life would be like if I didn't have people around me that cared and wanted to see me feel better and attempted to understand me. It's a very special thing. Not everyone gets that. My mom was one of those main people for me. Like, I mean, of course she's my mom. Like, obviously she does so much for me in general, but she really went the extra mile, I guess you could say, with this other stuff. My mom, even though she couldn't understand exactly what I was feeling, she always talked to me about it, and she didn't make me feel like I was crazy. She didn't make me feel like there was something wrong with me. When I was saying to myself, like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with me? Like, I can't do this. Like, there's something inherently wrong. And my mom always told me there's nothing wrong with you. And she's never made me think that I was being dramatic or that I just needed to get over it or whatever. I'm extremely lucky that I had someone, and I have other people as well who have been this way. I'm just speaking directly about my mother. I can't imagine where I would be without her. I don't know how I would be right now without her. I've been able to have many resources because my mom was an advocate for me. That's very sweet and very loving, and she obviously cares for me in a lot of ways, and I always know she loves me. But this is just another, probably one of the prime examples of the lengths she goes through for me, for something that she didn't even understand or know much about. I didn't have to deal with it alone because of her, and like I said, other people in my life as well. I've been very lucky to have people to talk to. Never underestimate how far you can get with the help of others. That's my theme. That's the theme of this, I guess. I don't know. There isn't really supposed to be a theme, but that's just something I'll leave you with, I guess, for this, at this moment. However, it's still there. I'm pretty good around someone who's like saying that they feel kind of sick or whatever. I mean, I probably won't be, like hugging them and sharing food with them. Whereas before, if someone even had like any sort of hints that they were feeling bad, I'd be gone. I would not stick around, I would leave, or I'd distance myself as much as I could. So I'm better with that. Whenever I specifically don't feel good, I'm better at dealing with that. I still get kind of, wound up about it. I do. But the exposure therapy definitely helped a lot with getting better. I feel like, though, I wish people understood better. Because, I mean, this is and has been a significant thing in my life, all my life, and not many people around me understood it. On top of that too, in elementary school specifically, when kids would throw up and I would freak out, kids would see that. They didn't know what it was about at first, but then they kind of realized what triggered it, and what triggered it was someone being sick. So then these kids, being who they are, decided that it would be fun to pretend like they were gonna throw up in front of me to get me to freak out and be anxious. So that didn't feel great. So I didn't like telling anyone about it after that, because I didn't want them to use it against me Or also I didn't want them to feel like they couldn't talk about certain things with me. I didn't want them to hide that they were feeling sick around me because they knew I'd be freaked out by it. Like, I'd rather they didn't know that about me and they'd tell me directly. Because I mean, now, you know, part of the exposure therapy too is to put yourself in those situations and not avoid, because that just makes it more powerful, you know. I still don't really tell people directly. My close friends know about it. I just don't talk about it too much because not many people get it, and I don't know, I just feel like it's not like a fun conversation topic. I don't know. I don't bring it up unless it's sort of relevant to the conversation or something comes up. But I feel like it is important that there is a differentiation. I wish people weren't saying, oh yeah, I have my emetophobia, my emetophobia doesn't like this, when it's just a, you know, more of a dislike or whatever, because it can be debilitating. That's not the same as being, you know, not like something, or being grossed out or being afraid. And there have been multiple times in my life where if I'm feeling sick or whatever, I'd honestly be thinking in my head, I'd be like, I would rather die than throw up. Like, I thought that so many times when I was really bad with it. It wasn't even like a question. I'd be like, no, I just don't even want to live through this. I don't want to deal with it. I can't deal with this. Some people will be talking about emetophobia or whatever, and some people, if they, you know, whether they actually have it or don't, I don't know, but like, some people, it does feel like it's being kind of thrown around a little bit more loosely. That's just my opinion. But there are times too when people will comment, you know, reply to someone else talking about it and being like, you gotta get over it, or whatever, or just, you know, like, you're afraid of throwing up, or, you know, like as if it's, I don't know, I guess people give more credit or something to people that have like an intense fear of something that seems more logically dangerous, like heights or snakes or spiders or whatever. But it's not about that, you know, like, there's a emotional, psychological attachment to this. It's not like I want to be extremely afraid of throwing up, okay? I never wanted that, obviously, because it has affected my life. It's literally actually like affected friendships I've had, especially when I was younger and I couldn't deal with it as well or hide it as well. If a friend of mine was acting like maybe they felt sick, or they told me they felt sick, I would just avoid them. I would kind of, you know, really associate them with illness for longer, like, not just that time. It would keep going. So I kind of, you know, distance myself a little bit if I knew it was someone that got sick often or that had been sick before and I was afraid they'd be sick again. And they would, you know, be upset with me. I mean, reasonably so. Like, obviously they don't understand what I'm going through, and obviously I wasn't dealing with it well either. It's not something you can just get over just like that, you know. It's much, much harder. If everyone could get over a phobia that quickly, there wouldn't be phobias. You get what I'm saying? It just wouldn't be a thing. Because if everyone could get over it that quickly, it would, like, everyone would. No one likes feeling like this. It's a feeling of absolute terror. It's some of the times I've been the most afraid in my life. It's been about throwing up. I used to not even be able to say throw up or vomit or whatever. Couldn't say those words. I didn't like saying it. I'd say like get sick maybe, but even then sometimes I'd be afraid of saying that. It's a lot. And it was not fun. And I guess that's why I wanted to like kind of just share my cute little story there, because I think it's very difficult, and I feel like when people are just talking about, oh, my emetophobia, people kind of see that and they're like, oh yeah, they're afraid of throwing up. And like, it's just not showing the magnitude of what it really is for some people, because it really does change kind of the trajectory of how you live your life and whether you really live it. Because, you know, for a while there, I would not do certain things. Like I said, I wouldn't go on field trips. I didn't like traveling in general. I wouldn't try new foods because I'd be afraid it would make me sick because they weren't safe. There were so many things that I felt like I couldn't do. And now I try and do all those because that's part of getting over it, is making yourself do those things and realize that you're okay. You got through it. That's it. Now I'm here. I would say I'm kind of thriving, you know, I don't know. I know there are other people that have dealt with this too, or are dealing with this, and I know that it's difficult. And I wish people didn't make it seem like something that is so small. It's just like someone being dramatic or ridiculous or whatever, because it really, it's not fun and it's not easy. And I would say it's probably one of the hardest things I've dealt with in my life. I'm not even kidding. And I've dealt with other, like, I've had other, you know, things happen in my life that people would consider to be probably more difficult, like logically, rationally, to deal with. But this, which is all my own creation in my mind, has probably been the hardest thing for me to get over in my life. And I'm still not fully over it. I don't know if I ever will be, but I'm dealing with it, and I think that's the best I can do. It can be helped, you know. Sometimes you have to do the worst things to get over it, and things that you would like never ever choose to do. But it's worth it. Yeah, and I'm still working on that today, but hope that people can see that it can take over your life. And I'm very happy that it doesn't anymore. Thanks for listening. I know this was long-winded, but I feel like it's something I wish a lot of people could know, you know, from someone who like deals with it, I guess, you know. Also, sorry I'm like in pajamas for this, and but also like who cares? So I'm talking about like throwing up, so it's not like I needed to like dress up for that, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, bye.